On the afternoon of June 30th, 2011, Stephen McDaniel sat in a television studio in Macon, Georgia, and spoke to a reporter about his missing neighbor Lauren Giddings, and for reasons he would not understand until much later, the reporter sitting across from him already knew that human remains had been found in the trash bin behind their apartment building that morning. If you're drawn to cases where the killer is sitting in plain sight, subscribe to the Untold record. This is exactly what we do here. Lauren Giddings was 27 and had just graduated from Mercer University Law School. She lived alone in a small apartment complex on Georgia Avenue populated largely by other students and young professionals. She was preparing to take the bar exam. Her friends described someone organized, focused, and careful about her surroundings. Stephen McDaniel lived just down the hall. He was also a recent Mercer Law graduate. He was 25 and had been in several of the same classes as Lauren during their 3 years of school. They were not close. They were not dating. They were simply two people who had passed each other in the hallway dozens of times and had occasionally spoken about coursework. But in the weeks leading up to June 2011, Stephen had developed a pattern that nobody around him had fully recognized. He had been entering Lauren's apartment without her knowledge. He had been watching her. He had been taking things from her home and returning them in ways she had not noticed. And on the night of June 25th, 2011, he used a key to let himself inside while she slept. That would be the last night Lauren Giddings was alive. In the days that followed, Lauren missed several appointments. Her friends left messages that went unanswered. One of them went to the apartment complex and knocked on her door. Stephen McDaniel was the one who answered questions in the hallway. He told people he had not seen her. He offered to help look for her. He was the one who suggested checking local parks. On the morning of June 30th, 2011, maintenance workers at the apartment complex noticed a foul smell coming from a trash bin in the parking area behind the building. When they looked inside, they found several black garbage bags. One of them had torn open. What was inside led police to cordon off the property within the hour. It would turn out that on the night of June 25th, Stephen McDaniel had entered Lauren's apartment with a key he had obtained. He had stood in her bedroom. He had strangled her while she slept. He had then spent the next several hours dismembering her remains in her bathroom using a hacksaw he had purchased days earlier. He had placed the remains into multiple garbage bags. He had carried them down the hallway past his own apartment door. He had thrown them into the trash bin behind the building as if they were ordinary refuse. Then he had gone back to his apartment and waited. 2 days later, he agreed to a televised interview about Lauren's disappearance. The interview took place on the afternoon of June 30th at WGXA Fox 24 in Macon. Stephen sat in a chair and spoke to reporter Frank Fontana in a voice that remained steady and low. He said Lauren was a nice person. He said her disappearance was a terrible thing. He said he hoped she would be found safe. Then Fontana leaned forward and told him that police had found a body. Stephen's posture kind of shifted. His mouth opened slightly. He stopped blinking. He looked at the reporter and then looked past the camera toward a spot on the wall. He asked, in a voice that had dropped to a whisper, whether they knew who it was. Fontana told him the remains had not yet been identified. Stephen sat back in his chair and stared forward. He did not speak for several seconds. When the interview resumed, his hands were gripping the armrests tightly enough that his knuckles had turned white. He had just learned on live television that the remains he had placed in the trash had been discovered. He had also just given every person watching the broadcast a reason to remember his face. In 2014, Stephen McDaniel pleaded guilty to the murder of Lauren Giddings and was sentenced to life in prison. He is currently incarcerated in Georgia. And sometimes the most unsettling cases aren't the ones with no suspect. They're the ones where the suspect sits in front of a camera and describes the disappearance as a terrible thing, knowing exactly where the body is because he put it there himself. If you're drawn to cases that still echo long after they're closed, subscribe to the Untold record. There's always another file waiting to be opened.